Welcome to Ion Innovation, brought to you by the OIS Podcast. I'm your host, Carey Powers. Today, we are at OIS Retina Summit in Seattle, where we have the opportunity to sit down with some companies doing really exciting work on the forefront of new technology in the retina space.
My distinguished guest today is Dr. Houman Hemmati, co-founder and chief medical officer of Optigo Biotherapeutics. Optigo Bio is developing precision-targeted peptides aimed to increase the duration of intravitreal drugs for retina diseases such as geographic atrophy and wet AMD. Welcome to the OIS Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful. Good to have you here. So first, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about Optigo and what you're working on over there?
Yeah, Optigo is a very exciting new company. We decided to treat an unmet need in retina, which is to take existing, best performing intravitreal drugs, whether they're anti-VEGF drugs or drugs for geographic atrophy or anything else, and not try to improve the efficacy of the drug, but rather keep the efficacy and prolong the duration of activity. One of the key problems of the drugs is their monthly or bi-monthly dosing frequency, which is not good for patients, not good for the physicians, and not good for the payers. And so we wanted to address a problem that can really help everybody by creating something that leverages the efficacy of the existing best-in-class drugs, but with a reduced injection frequency into the vitreous by basically leveraging the vitreous gel as a sustained release polymer instead of doing what others have done over the years, which is to inject a polymer into an eye that's already filled with tons of other polymers.
Very interesting. So here at OIS Retina Summit, what are the big updates that you have to share for our listeners?
Yeah, it's exciting for us. We've spent the last few years now since our inception working on developing multiple different binders to the vitreous, short peptides that don't reduce the efficacy of existing drugs, but which covalently modify kind of the non-business or non-binding end of them, such as Eylea or aflibercept. And we've generated multiple different binders to different components of the vitreous, attached them to aflibercept, and then tested them in vivo models to see how much can we prolong the duration of activity of existing drugs. And so for aflibercept, for example, with just one binder to a component of the vitreous, we were able to see several-fold more drug after a month compared to Eylea. And that's exciting because it means that we really are prolonging its residence time in the vitreous, and hopefully we can therefore translate that into prolonged duration of efficacy as well.
And so what's the significance of that for both clinicians and patients?
Look, it just means that we're going to maintain the efficacy of Eylea or anything else we choose to utilize, while at the same time just reducing the injection frequency. That means lower inconvenience for patients. It allows less burden on the retina specialists. Their waiting rooms and clinics won't be as full. It's easier on the payer, fewer claims and smaller claims, hopefully, overall. It means lower chance of endophthalmitis or other procedure-related complications like retinal detachment. So in the end, I think everyone benefits from it, and it doesn't come at the compromise of efficacy. And we've shown in some of our preclinical models that our anti-VEGF efficacy is identical to the innovator, to Eylea in our case. And so we're not compromising efficacy while just simply expanding the duration.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So as you think forward 12 months, if everything goes exactly as planned,
Yes.
what milestones do you hope to achieve?
So what we really hope to show in the next 12 months is to provide proof of concept for not just one of our binders, but multiple binders, elevate using preclinical testing at least one or two into later stage preclinical testing, do more CMC development, and be ready for a pre-IND so that we can hit the clinic.
Fantastic. Sounds very, very promising.
Thank you.
Well, we wish you all the best of success here at OIS, and we'll be listening and watching to see what plays out. So.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Next up, we have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Michael Tsipursky, CEO and co-founder of Revive Biotech.
Welcome to the OIS Podcast.
Thank you, Carey. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. So Revive Biotech has a novel method of treating central retinal artery occlusion by injecting oxygen-loaded nanobubbles into the eye intravitreally. That's quite a mouthful. I have no idea what that is. So let's just start there because this is an extremely novel, innovative concept. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Thanks so much, Carey. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's very exciting. We have developed this proprietary technology of oxygen nanocarriers. It's a nanoparticle that gets injected into the eye of a patient with a central retinal artery occlusion and delivers oxygen to the back of the eye, where there's a process called ischemia where there's poor oxygenation. And these patients really have no other way of getting treated, so they basically undergo either complete or partial blindness otherwise.
Wow, that sounds really impactful in terms of the disease impact.
It is, yeah.
So what are you working on right now? What are the milestones or news that you have coming out that you'd like to share here today at OIS?
Sure. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening at Revive Biotechnology. The most exciting thing, obviously, is that we can deliver kind of impactful technology to the patients that really have no other way of getting treated. We have had very great progress with research and development. So we've made milestones in both preclinical animal work. We've developed particles that we're able to transfer to CROs for CMC. So this will be something that will be ready to be injected into humans. We basically have published in very impactful journals and presented large meetings. We have secured our intellectual property in the United States and all over the world. Actually, just recently, we received the news that National Science Foundation, which has been funding us with phase 1 NSF grant, is now funding us with phase 2 NSF grant, which is $1 million grant, which is huge for our company, and obviously will add to all the seed funding that we've raised from our investors.
Congratulations, that's big news indeed for early stage startups, so that's incredible. So as you look forward 12 months, if everything goes exactly according to plan, which we all know in development is just how it always goes, right? So 12 months from now, what do you anticipate might be the milestones that you'll achieve?
Sure, thanks Carey for that question. So we're going to continue to try to achieve progress with our main clinical entity, CRAO. That will be through the regulatory process. So we're slated for our pre-IND meeting with FDA sometime in October of 2023. So that'll be a very good meeting, and we should be able to have all our CMC and toxicity work in line to present to them. And once we have the minutes of that meeting, we'll be able to go and do our Series A fundraise, where we're going to raise $10 million. With that, we should be able to do our CMC toxicity and basically be ready for first-in-human trials.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Any last parting updates you'd like to leave with the OIS listeners?
Sure. So, we developed this nanoparticle. My partner is a renowned professor at University of Illinois. Our company spun out of University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. It's a first of its kind nano delivery system of oxygen. We should be able to address central retinal artery occlusion, but also other allied ischemic conditions in the eye. And this will be really impactful for all retina community, for our patients. We have put together a great advisory board with likes of Arshad Kanani, Jay Pareg, David Eichenbaum, and we've developed a very strong team. So we feel very, blessed, and we feel like we should be able to push this forward and bring this to our patients in a reasonable amount of time.
So do you anticipate that this will follow the traditional FDA approval pathway?
Thanks, Carey. So I think this is a very unique particle that hasn't been explored before, and we're addressing it in a very small subset of patients, which it's about 10,000 patients per year in the United States. So this definitely falls into orphan designation category, which has all sorts of perks as far as FDA pathway. So we've been discussing this with FDA, and we've been in very close contact with them.
Of course, so it could potentially be in the hands of clinicians even sooner.
That's correct.
Fantastic. Well, we will all be rooting for you. It sounds like if this is successful, just have an enormous impact on disease burden. So
Absolutely.
Best of luck to you guys at the Revive team.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carey.
I'd like to welcome Dr. Michael Singer.
Dr. Singer is clinical professor of ophthalmology at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, Texas. He's also the director of clinical research at Medical Center Ophthalmology. Dr. Singer is here today to talk about Unity Biotechnology's clinical trial of UBX 1325, a senolytic therapeutic under investigation for the treatment of diabetic macular edema and wet AMD. Dr. Singer is a principal investigator in that trial. So welcome to the OIS Podcast, Dr. Singer.
Carey, thanks for having me.
Wonderful to have you here. And thankfully you're here because I don't think any of our listeners know what a senolytic therapeutic is. So let's just start there.
So the concept of senolytic has to do with the fact that as our cells get older, you have these cells that essentially slow down their normal processes. And when you look at wet AMD and DME, you have more senolytic cells develop over time. So as your diabetes gets worse or your wet AMD gets worse, you have these these senile cells. And a senolytic agent is what we want to do is we want to stop that. We want to stop these senolytic cells, and if we can remove them from the system, then your body can restore itself and hopefully reverse some of the processes that are involved in the disease process, like wet AMD or DME.
Fantastic. So Dr. Singer, can you give us a top-line overview of the data that Unity has released thus far?
Wonderful. Happy to do it. So essentially, Unity has the Behold trial, and the Behold trial was a DME trial. And they looked at people who were the frequent flyers that needed a lot of medication to sustain their treatment. And they really want to find a stability point. If you look at the pivotal trials like VIVID and VISTA, patients gained vision initially, and over time their vision plateaued. So they wanted to have people who were previously treated for diabetic macular edema that needed multiple injections, and they randomized them to a UBX 125 versus sham, and they followed them over time with good rescue criteria, so patients weren't abandoned. And it turns out if you follow them over time, patients with UBX 125, about 50% of them did not need a rescue injection in up to a year. So it really showed some positive results in terms of the fact that by using this medicine, you're able to stabilize these people in such a way that frequent injections may not be necessary. And this is obviously a big deal in our diabetic populations because they're notoriously non-compliant. So you want something that works longer. We already have something that works stronger.
Very good. So what's the current status of the trial and the anticipated timeline of bringing a treatment like this to market?
So the DME, the Behold trial, with its positive results, they're going to run another trial looking at it to see if it's potential approval through the FDA. So they're going to repeat the trial. The other trial that's part of this was for wet AMD. It was essentially in the Unity trial, they looked at patients who needed frequent injections, and they gave them an injection of aflibercept followed by the UBX medication, and then they gave the aflibercept arm aflibercept every other month as per label. And it turns out when you looked at it, these patients, even though they were frequent flyers, they had lots of treatments, 4 out of the last 6 months, when you gave them one shot of aflibercept, it wasn't enough. Because essentially, after the first shot of aflibercept, but when they went to randomization, the aflibercept arm gained 3 letters after the second shot of aflibercept, but didn't gain any more vision. So they didn't have enough of a pre-treatment arm, and the Unity basically didn't gain any vision at all. But they didn't need a whole lot of supplementation. So although they didn't hit their primary endpoint in terms of visual acuity or OCT, 50% of people did not need rescue. So it appears to me that this trial, although was not designed the way it should have been, doesn't really disqualify the potential value of this medication going forward.
Very good. So what do you think that the impact of introducing this new class of treatment will have on clinical practice?
I think the concept is, we're really good at anti-VEGF, but the world is more than VEGF. And what we need to do is have things that are going to extend the duration of our great anti-VEGF. And I think senolytics makes sense. It makes sense that over time, there are factors that are involved that cause breakdown. Obviously, if you look in dry macular degeneration, you see all the complement inhibitors that are trying to deal with the aging population. If we can remove some of these cells, I think it'll be a great addition to our toolbox. I don't think it's going to be used alone. It's going to be used in combination, and it'll probably, over time, if we look 5 to 10 years from now, treating these diseases as we do in cancer, there'll be a cocktail of medications. Some will work on VEGF, some will work on inflammation, some will potentially work on senolytic. So again, it's very exciting to be a retina specialist, but we're just watching the dawn of a new era.
Exciting indeed. I love it. Sounds like very promising results for patients. So thank you so much for hopping over and explaining senolytic therapeutics to us here at the OIS Podcast.
Thrilled to be there. Thanks for having me.
For our final interview, we have two guests from Nanoscope Therapeutics.
We have Mohanty, president and co-founder, and we have Sulagna Bhattacharya, CEO and also co-founder. So welcome to the OIS Podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
Happy to be here.
Nanoscope Therapeutics is developing an ambient light-activated optogenetic therapy to restore vision in people suffering from various inherited retinal degenerative diseases, including retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt, and dry AMD.
So first, let's start out by sharing a little bit with our listeners who is Nanoscope Therapeutics.
Nanoscope Therapeutics is developing transformative therapy for patients being blind from retinal degenerative conditions, whether it is inherited or acquired, such as retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt disease, or advanced AMD. MCO has the potential to become fast restorative and regenerative therapy for these patients to restore vision.
It's a privilege to lead Nanoscope, more so to achieve my personal mission to help this disease patient. Blindness hits close to home to my family. So it's more than a business to me to give the hope and regain the sight back for this patient.
Very good. So we're here at the OIS Retina Summit here in Seattle. So what is the most exciting update or advancement that you have to share for our listeners?
Yeah, the ambient light activable multi-characteristic opsin is now validated across 3 different clinical trials across multiple IRD diseases in randomized controlled trial as well as open label trial for Stargardt. So we are very excited to share this consistency in data that we are achieving across multiple trials and multiple diseases.
Very good. So, so tell us, what is the significance of an advancement like this for the patients?
We are hearing the patients are regaining their ability to recognize their family members' faces, navigating in their own home or workplace without hitting the obstacle or any assistance. We normal vision patients take this for granted. These are very normal for our day-to-day activities, but for retinal degenerative patients, they are losing their capabilities or they already have lost. So when they're going through these challenges, I have seen this devastating journey for a loved one. So when you hear the stories, like the patient are coming back to their life, they're feeling alive again, these are a big achievement on a personal level for me. And we are eagerly waiting to hear and share these stories and videos to you all.
That's very exciting. It's results like that and the individual patient impact that the technology is having. This is why we do what we do. So that's very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So as you think ahead to the next 12 months, what are the milestones that you think that you will have achieved or you hope to achieve in the next year?
Yeah, these patients with advanced retinal degeneration without any photoreceptor has no hope or no treatment today. And we truly have a platform that can actually impact these patients, restoring some level of vision, improving their quality of life. And we believe we truly can democratize gene therapy for this advanced patient in a mutation agnostic manner. And it's all onto us, our dedicated team of scientists and clinicians working with regulatory agency to have an alignment on an expedited path how to make this drug available to the patients, to a wider population in the United States as well as in Europe. That's the biggest goal for our MCO10 program. And the next follow-on program is a non-viral laser delivery program where we are looking forward to impact even bigger populations of advanced AMD leading to GA, where we can restore light sensitivity and vision in the atrophic areas, which while other companies or other approaches are trying to slow down the disease progression. It's a complementary approach that we bring to the table.
Very good, very good. Well, we're rooting for you here at OIS. It sounds like you've got just really impactful work that you're working on, and we can't wait to hear the results of your next trial. So thank you for joining us here at the OIS Podcast.
Thank you, Carey and OIS.
Thank you for having us here.
That's it for this episode of the OIS Podcast. I'm your host, Carey Powers.
Save the date as OIS returns to San Diego on December 1st and 2nd. Our 13th flagship summit unites corporate, clinical, and capital leaders driving novel therapies for both the front and back of the eye. You'll gain perspectives on addressing unmet needs across all of ophthalmology and optometry. Head over to oas.net for more information and to get registered. Your path to innovation begins here.